38 Special versus 32 H&R Magnum. What we have today is some button nose Wadcutters, and these bullets were all sent over to the channel by one of my Patreon supporters, Hillbilly Scholar. So thank you for sending those. And he's cast some bullets using some lineman molds here. Our 38 Special, that is using a 148 grain mold, but they're actually 143 grains because they're kind of a little bit of a harder cast alloy, not just pure lead. And then these molds for the 32 are the 85 grain mold, but they came out to actually 80 grains here. So I use tight grip powder for these loads. So I use 3.5 grains for our 38 Special and 2.5 grains for our 32 H&R Magnum. I'm going to use my 4-inch revolvers and my little 2-inch Snubnose revolvers for this test. So my Smith & Wesson 686 and 357 mag. It's got a 4 1/8 inch barrel, and then a 4.2 inch Ruger SP101 and 327 Federal mag, 2-inch barrel Taurus 605 and 357 mag, and our 1.875 inch Ruger LCR in 327 Federal Magnum. So very comparable barrel lengths with all these. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to do my real world simulation with every one of these shots. 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real living target. So we're looking to keep these bullets within that back rib simulation and not pass through. If they pass through, it's a possibility they could over penetrate. But we'll see what we get in our real world tests with our 38 Special versus 32 H&R Magnum, and then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. Alright, so first up we'll run these 38 Specials, the 143 grain bullets here. I'll run them in 2 different barrel lengths, the 4-inch and then the 2-inch barrel. Then I'll see how our 32 H&R Magnum does over the chronograph. So 38 Special Wadcutters, 143 grain Limans. Let's see how these things will do with 3.5 grains tight grip powder. 872, 901, 905, 894, 890, 907. Those things are shooting just a little bit to the right for me. I don't know why that is specifically, but up close they're shooting a little bit right. It could just be me too, but let's see how I get in our little 2-inch barrel here. 836, 828, 812, 821, 831. All right, not too bad overall. Now we'll do our 32 H&R Magnum. First up, my Ruger SP101 with the 4.2 inch barrel. We have only 2.5 grains of tight grip powder, 4.2 inch barrel. Let's see what this does. 727, 840, 825, 823, 799, 866. Not super consistent, definitely a lot less powerful, but the thing that stands out is there's basically the recoil of a 22 caliber out of a gun like this with a load like that. So now a little Ruger LCR. Let's see how this does with that 80 grain bullet. 758, 799, 726, 793, 814, 776. All right, so respectable velocity for what it is. And again, with this, I don't really feel much more recoil in this than what I did in the SP101. So very, very, very low recoil with 32 H&R Magnum. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, our ballistic test, and this is our real world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Gotta remember, this is like a half representation, so whatever penetration we get in there, it would be about half that far in an actual living target. So what I want to do here is compare the 38 directly to the 32 H&R Magnum in roughly the same barrel length. So I'm going to use my 4-inch barrels, do a shot of 38 Special, then a shot of 32 H&R Magnum, and see how they compare. So 38 Special, see how this does. Let me hit that one more time. You know, that was kind of interesting there, because I see the bullet right now. I got another round here. I'm going to hit a little bit more center because it went out of the block to the left. All right. Now let's hit that with our 32 H&R Magnum. Let's go take a look. So that laugh there is kind of like, because the 32 H&R Magnum, it almost feels like a misfire because the recoil is just so low. Here's the back side of that rib simulation. Only went in straight. You know, that first one actually went through that back rib simulation, which is interesting. I don't understand why that one went so much deeper, but it just seemed a little bit off. And it almost looks like maybe it hit the rib simulation then bounced off it, but it goes keyholing through the side there. So I don't know. I'm not even going to count that shot because this looks a little weird. It just seems off. That doesn't seem right at all. What's interesting though is in this first 3 inches, there's actually a good amount of energy dump. And what I mean by that is a lot of times if you shoot like a round nose bullet, as soon as it hits this, there's almost no damage. And like hollow points that expand will cause what you're seeing here. So these are actually ripping through, kind of doing the same type of thing that like a hollow point that's expanding would do. So I do find that really, really interesting. So I'm going to count these bullets that we have in these blocks here. What we got with the 38 Special here is about 16 3/4 inches. And with our 32 H&R Magnum, we're right at 15 inches. So very comparable there for the penetration, except for that one that went really far. So let's try this in our Snubnose revolvers now and see how these do. All right, Snubnose revolvers. Let's see how these will do. So here's our 38 Special for our real world simulation. And here is our 32 H&R Magnum. Let's go take a look. So yeah, that's kind of what I expected. And you know, the recoil gun, it's like half the recoil. So not quite as much damage from the snubs going on here, and good performance overall. And what I like about these is they don't really do anything that weird. They don't over penetrate, and they seem like they penetrate further than your standard wad cutter, but they penetrate less than a semi wad cutter. So a little button nose is kind of like a miniature semi-wad cutter, and it kind of splits the difference between a wad cutter and a semi-wad cutter. Even though those are kind of supposed to be splitting the differences in and of themselves, this is like another level of that. And honestly, what I'm seeing here is kind of perfect because we're getting adequate penetration. That's not something that we typically see with regular wad cutters through the rib simulation. So the fact that they're getting adequate penetration is really, really good here. So it almost looks like that 38 was keyholing a little in that 32 H&R Magnum. Let's going straight. But adequate penetration on both. A 38 special, we went to about 16 3/4 inches, was just really good. And then our 32 H&R Magnum, we went to about 13 3/4. So we had adequate penetration with all of these. All of them had low recoil, but what really stands out is the that 32 H&R Magnum has a lot less recoil. So imagine a 9mm. Now you have a 38 Wadcutter that has maybe 50% less recoil than that, and then a 32 H&R Magnum that has 50% less recoil than the 38 Special. You know, my math is a little off on percentages, you know, I try to explain them, but you know what I'm trying to say is 38 has double the recoil, it seems like, than the 32, and then the 9mm has like 50% more on top of that. So it's just very low recoil overall. So let's pull these out of block. I'll take a close-up look at them. I'm going to shoot a steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets. These are the ones from our 4-inch barrels and the ones from our 2-inch barrels. There's essentially no change to these bullets here. Here's one of the 38s. Very hard bullets, so absolutely no deformation. That's exactly what we want, though. When we're talking a little bit lower power cartridges, we don't want deformation. Here's our little 32 4-inch barrel, and the 2-inch barrel, there's no change at all. Here's our 38 through the snub, and here is our 32 through the snub. So, you know, I've seen a lot of bad performance because of bullet alloy in general. Like, I've seen bullets hit the rib simulation, go sideways, and then flatten sideways to such a degree that they won't penetrate past like 5 inches in the gel. So when you're talking lower powered, you definitely want to have a nice hard projectile. Now that's one of the reasons why like 22 long rifle is so bad sometimes for its performance. Not so much that it doesn't have the energy, but the bullets are so soft, they just flatten, they don't penetrate enough. So when you're talking little 32s with little small amounts of energy like these have, these are perfect. You want something hard like that. So for the task at hand, these were actually almost perfect for terminal ballistics. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target, so I just want to see what kind of practical shootability these things have. You know, I'm just going to get a front sight picture, pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target, and see if there's a big difference in how they feel for recoil. So I'm going to do my 4-inch barrels first. So 14 yards from the target, 38 special. I missed one. I'm just kind of popping those off as fast as I see my front sight. So let's see what I can do with our 32 H&R Magnum. All right, so the muzzle on that jumps up a little bit, so it just makes getting it back on target a little bit difficult. But 38 special and the snub. Let's see what this does. So I was just popping them off as fast as I thought I could hit the target. I barely saw my front sight picture. Didn't do so well there. And I'm going to do a little bit better from this distance. And one thing that stands out is that 38 has the most recoil out of the bunch. You know, the 38 doesn't have much recoil in the 4-inch, and the 32 H&R has not that much in either of these guns. The 38 and the snub, it's kind of up there. So 32 H&R mag through my LCR. All right, so that did the best for me. It just makes the most sense, and that's with the way the muzzle jumps. And this is my carry piece, so I'm glad that I'm doing okay with this. So let me back it up for some more distance and see how these shoot from a little more distance. All right, 100 yards from the target. I told Billy Scholar when we were talking about these loads, you know, how they were going along and all that. I said, I think with being 80 grains and these 32s having like 0 recoil, I think that they're gonna shoot good from 100 yards because there's gonna be like no flinch, and 80 grains just heavy enough to maybe do okay. So I'm keeping true to my word. You can't even see the steel from here, but we're 100 yards out. And I got just enough clearance there to aim at that steel. So let's see what I can do from 100 yards with these Wadcutters. So 38 special. See what this does. I can't see where that hit, but that I aimed kind of center mass, but a little bit high, like shoulder height. All right, all things considered, that's not too bad. And it's very difficult because, you know, at this distance, the target is just a hair smaller than the sights, so you're kind of guessing at this distance with these type of sights. So Snubnose, see what this does. 38 special. Wow, that hit over the target by like 30 feet or something. So the rest of those, the elevation was okay, but they were hitting just a little bit left for me. So here we are with our 32 H&R Magnums. I was thinking that, you know, I'm gonna have like no flinch on this, so I might be able to dial these things in. So 4-inch barrel, see how the 32 H&R does. That hit low left by like, I don't know, 20 feet. Try one single action. Why that hit, I don't know. Wow, that hit really far to the left, like really far to the left. A little bit low. A lot low. To the right. So at that distance I can't keep these things very consistent, but that is kind of fun. So last up we have the LCR here. I don't know where these are going to hit, so let's see what these will do. Quite a bit to the right. Really high. Really, really, really high. So, you know, the one that, you know, the parallax will throw that hill off. It looks a lot different than the actual distance. That hill is like probably 50 or 60 foot high. My second to last shot, I hit like 30 feet above the target, and then the next one I hit. So what's happening there is, you know, these particular bullets with these particular loads and being flat-faced bullets at this distance, they are kind of starting to want to be wonky. It seems like, though, out of the 4-inch barrel, this load did well. So whatever velocity that 4-inch barrel was given, or, you know, lower 800s, was enough that it stabilized and that was the right barrel length. But out of the snub, it was all over, and then the 32s were kind of all over. So just not a great combination for distance here. So this was a lot of fun to do this test. I've been wanting to do this for, you know, several days now since I loaded these, and really fun overall. I would say, you know, for personal protection at close range, stuff like this is actually a pretty good option, especially with the 32 H&R mag, because sometimes you can't get loads that perform all that well. So you might as well just go as far downward recoil as you can and just have something that's super low recoil that you can really land those shots like I could do out of this LCR at close range. I think that's a great option. And it's a great option for those ultralight, you know, 32 H&R Magnum revolvers. You know, out of this 4-inch barrel, it's almost like too little of recoil or something. It was hard to control based on that. I know it sounds funny, but yeah, it's like I'm pulling the trigger. I'm used to like bracing the gun a lot more, and it's almost like there is just enough flinch that I'm bracing it too much at the 4-inch. Not doing so well with it. But as far as the thermal ballistics go, very good. So that was a very fun, interesting test. So thank you to Hillbilly Scholar for sending these bullets. He sent a whole bunch more that I'm going to be loading up and testing too. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.